Hello, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 45, How to Date a Shaman, which is kind of a funny title for, I think, anything. And we are excited to be here. I am Catherine Bird, and I am with my dear Shaman sister, Michelle Hawk. And we created this podcast out of our talks that we were having regularly about our practices, our work in the world, our personal life, pretty much anything and everything. And those conversations were so fun and amazing and insightful that we decided to make them public and to bring you topics every week. And I believe that we are pretty much almost to an exact anniversary of doing this podcast. So 45 episodes over the last year is quite an accomplishment. So yay us.
Next year will be our year anniversary, or no, not next year. Next week will be our year anniversary. Yeah.
So how to date a shaman. Okay. So, Michelle and I are both practitioners. We're both women who've had the pleasure and sometimes the misfortune of being single and dating over the years. And we know, what I was writing today, and my post about this was really about how many super powerful, fully activated, amazing, incredible, not just women, but a lot of women, practitioners, psychics, shamans, all of these people that I know who are single, who have their own challenges with the dating scene, as it were. Like, there are some specific challenges that we come across. And so, we wanted to kind of dive into this to both kind of give some reflection and some support to those who are practitioners and are going through some things that might seem a little like, oh, maybe this is just me. And we can all collaborate on the fact that it's not just you. And then also for those who either kind of are in the community and maybe actively dating someone who would describe themselves in this way, or interested in dating someone who is described this way and maybe is feeling a little intimidated or not really sure exactly, what they should be, Googling in order to figure us out.
Absolutely. We're looking at this from both sides of the relationship. And also, Kat, it's funny, as I was thinking about this episode today, everything that was coming to mind just seemed like good general dating advice to me. So, I mean, we're going to get into some of the specifics, and I think some things are particularly unique to dating a shaman or dating a practitioner. And yet most of it, honestly, is just basic common sense and good dating practices anyway, like boundaries. That's a good thing. We'll get more into that, but this topic is personally relevant right now, I think, for both of us. What's that crackling noise? Is that coming on your end?
I don't hear it.
Okay.
Is it the microphone or
maybe
speaker? Or
it stopped now, but it was coming through a little bit, and
turn down my volume a little bit. So
okay, maybe I'll turn down mine a tiny bit too.
Eventually, we'll have an official, recording studio where everything will be very fancy.
Oh yeah, spotless audio quality. Woo, let's call that in. But this particular topic, how to date a shaman, I think is relevant to both of us in general, but specifically right now. And it actually came about to share with you viewers. I've been started seeing somebody recently who told me the other day that she Googled how to date a shaman, and I sat bolt upright and said, "And what did you find?" And she said, "Nothing." So I was completely astonished by that. I thought it was sweet, and so now we're talking about it because I think that needs to be out there. There's videos for everything these days.
There is. So we might write a book about it, and that'll be like our famous thing that we do, and it'll blow up and
right.
Be like, that's what we're known for, really?
No. There's too much going on. I want to be known for other things. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think personally, I've always been a big dater. Before my spiritual awakening, especially, I just dated a ton. I was always like lots of relationships and love interests in dating. I always found a lot of pleasure from it in certain ways and found it interesting and meeting new people and so on and so forth. But I definitely, the more spiritual that I became, the more challenging it was to meet people who could relate to me, and, you know, have conversations and be able to kind of understand where I was coming from. And you know, I know that I definitely have been on quite a few dates where the person across from me is looking at me like I am from another planet. And they just, like, I'm an oddity that they've, you know, they're just sideshow oddity that they're just like, have no idea what to say on when I'm actually explaining what I do in a very, I feel, mainstream sort of way. That as they ask questions and kind of dig deeper, it does often sound a little bit more and more outside their comfort zone in a way that makes it very hard to connect. So I definitely have had that experience quite a few times until I very much got to the point where I you know, started to enact better boundaries in order to not have that happen, and do a lot more sort of vetting of people so that that didn't become my experience, because usually I just felt like really unseen and unheard and kind of just not really able to connect to that person as maybe I would have liked to. So it felt kind of disappointing.
Yeah. I think you're probably speaking to a lot of people in that experience. In terms of my dating history, I have dated, I think, much less, just because there was always this alien feeling for me. And so even though, you know, I have my dating history just as anyone, I have always been super picky about that. And it can be a little bit challenging to find someone who, you know, given my list of criteria that I have of like, okay, they have to believe in magic. Magic is real. They have to, you know, not think I'm crazy for being psychic. They have to, and like, honestly, those two, that crosses a lot of people off the list right there. So there's, you know, kind of this inherent, what is the vibration that we're looking to match with? Kat, like you were saying, just feeling that there wasn't this potential for connection merely by the fact of, you know, these inherent limiting factors of, oh, you are so foreign to me, so outside my comfort zone that I don't even know how to speak the same language as you.
Right. And there are people who sort of almost, what do you call that? They're fetishizing us in a certain kind of way, where we're so outside the norm that they're attracted, they're interested, they're like, oh, magic, that's interesting, that's powerful, like I feel your power and I want to be near that, I want to be involved with it. But there's not a lot of being able to have a connection and understanding. And this is not to say that you have to be super spiritual, you have to be, you know, a shaman, you have to be a psychic, like you have to have these certain skills and gifts in order to you know, date someone who is that way. That's not the case at all. Currently, the man that I've been with for the last 2 years, he's spiritual, definitely conscious, but he works in the movie industry and he's an artist and a creator and builder. And you know, while has a certain spirituality and consciousness, is not involved in this world at all.
Yeah. And to that same end, I have never dated an actual practitioner. And, you know, so the men who I have been with and the people who I have dated, there has been a consistent awareness of spiritual practice and personal practice, and yet none of them have been practitioners in in this particular field. So, and that's okay. You don't want to date someone who's just like you anyway. That's fine. And yet, so what are some of these, I'm kind of curious, we can go at this, in several different ways. We're going to be talking about it from our perspective as the practitioner. We'll be talking about it from the perspective of the non-practitioner. But what are some of the most important things, Kat, that you can think of? Like some of the must-haves or must be willing to have or do in order to date someone who is a practitioner in the world? And also, I want to clarify too. So we're speaking about this in the romantic sense, and yet everything we're saying applies to friendship as well. If you are looking to have a really healthy dynamic relationship in the friend capacity, then everything we're saying still applies because all of those dynamics are still there.
Well, I think number one is an openness and a curiosity, because we're just a little bit different. And, we sometimes are having experiences that are very outside of the normal experiences that people have. And sometimes we like to share those experiences. And sometimes we are doing things that might just seem a little bit, different. I don't want to, I'm trying not to say like weird or whatever, but.
Well, but it might seem weird to be fair.
It might seem weird and be like, oh, okay, why are you doing that? And, there's a lot of us have a certain amount of kind of this shame and worry and fear around being different. It is from our childhoods, it's from past lives. We have a fear of being judged. Some of us have faced ridicule and abandonment and all of these different things and not received love for being different. So, when we can find someone who's just a fuck yes for accepting us the way that we are, like, okay, wow. So I know that on the full moon, you're going to be off doing this thing. Got it. And that's amazing. And, just to kind of have that openness and curiosity to ask questions. If you don't know what this person, maybe sometimes maybe we're talking about an aspect of our work or an aspect of our experiences and you don't have a context for that isn't what your experience is, then just a willingness to maybe ask questions and be interested and engaging in it, not like, well, that's not my experience, so I don't just, it's not right for me to ask questions. Like we're generally, want to share our lives and be open about the things that we're experiencing in a certain kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. To that, I would also say on the flip side, curiosity going the other way too. And this is admittedly a little bit of shadow in certain respects for myself and for plenty of other people I know who do work in this field, where I love what I do so deeply. This is my favorite thing to think about, to talk about, that sometimes it can be a little bit of a practice for me to maintain that same level of curiosity going the other way as well for someone who's not doing this work. There's magic exists in many forms. So again, even though this might not be the thing, like, for example, the last relationship I had was with a filmmaker. And I don't speak film. I don't know what he was doing, editing all this stuff. And yet it was a practice for me to maintain the curiosity and the interest in his particular brand of magic, which was very different from mine.
Yeah, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, I don't know if this is the place to speak about it. What are we saying now? What's our question here that you're asking?
How to date, or what are kind of the really important things?
The important things. All right. I don't want to move forward into something else until we kind of clear this one up.
Yeah. I want to talk about energetic sensitivity and the different pieces entailed with that. So like boundaries and communication, particularly.
Okay, great.
because I think that is a gold star one for any relationship. The person, if you are dating a spiritual practitioner or a shaman or an energy worker, they are probably going to have a greater degree or a different degree of energetic sensitivity than you are. It doesn't mean that they're making stuff up. It doesn't mean that what they're experiencing isn't real. It's a different level of subtlety. It's a different layer of perception. So think, for example, it's really easy to think about, okay, if you're dating a blind person who does not have their physical vision, you're going to have different layers of perception than they are, and they're going to have different layers of perception as you. So their hearing might be better, or, but obviously you have your sight. So there's this inherent, like, you have a sense that they do not have, and vice versa. And it is really, really important to remember that it's real. It is super real, and it directly informs their experience. So if, and I've had this happen for me, where I feel something energetically that the other person does not. And it created a certain degree of tension where this was my experience. It was real for me. And I took it upon myself to communicate that, but it wasn't received very well because it wasn't real for the other person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I would say that for our practitioners, our psychics, those that are in this work, if you start dating someone, and it's a huge red flag if you get this experience that they don't believe you. They don't believe what you say or what you're experiencing. They try to discount your experience. You have an intuitive hit about something and they're like, no, that's not what's going on. They're sort of, there's all this like gaslighting right out there in relationship land. And this can be a very damaging relationship, a dynamic for those that do have intuitive and psychic gifts, because it can make you doubt yourself and doubt everything and shut things down that might be, blossoming and expanding within you and making you feel confused. So I think that there's that.
Let's define that term, gaslighting. And I mean, you kind of talked around it, but not everyone knows what that means.
Okay. So it's basically when someone is telling you that what you're experiencing is not true or real. So they might be doing something, or sometimes it's even someone's doing an action, or they're saying something, and then later on when you're like, well, this is the action that you had or what you did, or for our cases, what I felt was happening, and then they're like, no, that's not what happened, that's not what I said, that's not what went on. And it actually is very crazy making. It makes you feel crazy, like, okay, I am not remembering things right, I'm not feeling things right, I'm not there's something wrong with me. And over time, it can be a very damaging relationship dynamic to be in with someone. So early warning signs of that and really paying attention is important. And a lot of, intuitive psychics, energy workers, honestly, we sometimes have a tendency to get into relationships with people who employ these tactics and really bring down both our vibrational frequency and our trust and faith in ourselves and our gifts.
Absolutely. And just to give you a little clue into what we're talking about next week, that is our topic. We're speaking about predators in the spiritual community. So I think it's interesting. We're doing these back to back. Number one, how to date a shaman. It's a good thing. And then next week, but maybe don't. Right. And exactly what you were describing, Kat, is really typical of sociopathic.
Right. And narcissists. And there are lots of articles online around narcissists being in this relationship dynamic with empaths and how they sort of end up coming together and how destructive that can be.
Exactly. And the person may not know they're doing it.
Yeah.
It might be completely innocent. It might be, so say if they're not a sociopath, they're not a narcissist, and yet they're still using this emotionally manipulative behavior, because that's what it is, emotionally manipulative, for whatever reason. Maybe your intuitive gifts are triggering something for them, and it's making them really afraid, so they're trying to shut you down because they don't want to look at whatever's going on in themselves. I mean, that's not an evil thing, it's a fear-based thing, and yet it is still under this umbrella of emotionally manipulative and energetically manipulative behavior.
Yeah. And I know we probably have other things to say here, but you just brought up something that was so important, around, oh my gosh, I've totally forgotten it. So maybe it wasn't that important. What did you say? It was something that's really important around, the way that we engage in relationships, and I have completely lost it out of my brain. It just went flying out. It'll come back.
Yeah.
You know it.
So with that, with the energetic sensitivity and the awareness comes the making it actionable, which is around the communication. Because all of this, and this is what I say in regards to any psychic practice or any energetic practices, it is completely useless unless you can put it into practice in your lived experience. And the same is true in the relationship realm, where, okay, I might be getting these psychic dings over here, or these intuitive hits, or these feelings, but unless I communicate it, unless I am willing to speak it, even if it's really, really vulnerable for me, it's not helpful. So then there's this layer of accountability of being very impeccable, very clear in speaking the truth, and being transparent in the feelings on both sides. And sometimes uncomfortable things will come up and need to be said. So for example, whatever fears might be arising around this interplay, this unknown realm for both parties, being honest about those fears, which inherently makes it less scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And sort of tying both of these things together is the aspect of the trigger, right? That we're triggering each other. And as healers, we are perhaps some of the most triggering people that there are, because those triggers are openings towards healing. They're opening the wound. They're opening maybe the stuff that's coming up around, my religion when I was young, and what I was told about people who spoke in tongues. Oh my gosh, like that's a big deal. And then now you're speaking in tongues. Like, this is crazy to me. I've never heard anybody do that. And I've always heard that it was evil. I mean, that's a really big deal that needs to be dealt with. And so, as we are triggerers, we trigger people into healing in some ways. And so that's going to happen in your relationship. I know that I've seen it happen in my relationships. And oftentimes, so I guess this is like the warning stamp, like getting involved with a practitioner in this kind of way can be highly transformative. It can really mess you up in that all of a sudden you're looking at yourself more deeply, and you're dealing with some of your, maybe childhood stuff and your early wounds. And we are transmuters, and we are those that push healing through more quickly than perhaps other people. And you already know, like all relationships, they're challenging, they push your buttons, they bring up your stuff, and they hopefully make you look at yourself and evolve. And relationships with us can kind of put that into hyperdrive for some people. So it can feel a little, crunchy just to be in the experience, because we're designed and trained in shifting energy and dealing with emotions and looking at stuff from the past and processing and all of these things that we're, doing on a daily basis. So when you're jumping in, you might be jumping in for some transformation through the process.
Absolutely.
So I think that's it. Be open for transformation.
I love that, the warning stamp. Like, dating a healer might cause you to experience radical transformation. Boom.
Yeah, I wrote a thing, I don't even know if I put it out, but that, I was looking at the experience in my relationship that I had over, especially the first year that we were together. And and or a year and a half, and a lot of the things that came up for him and for me, and you know, that a lot of times as healers and practitioners, and we will have this idea that our partner needs to be the ultimate divine masculine, or, you know, for men, probably this ultimate woman who has done all their work, is completely healed and whole, who has, you know, already transcended all of their shadow and all of these things. And I see a lot of single people who are sort of holding up this ideal that they're going to meet this person who's going to fit all of this criteria before they can open themselves to be in relationship. And yet we tend to forget that we are the ones who do that work. Like, that being in relationship with us might be giving that person complete access to becoming that divine masculine or feminine, completely whole and healed individual that you really want to be in relationship with. And it you know, and that when we enter in relationship with someone, their shit might totally come up big time, all of their stuff, because we're healers. So we're instigating it. We're like lighting the fire just by being around us. Their shit might come up super strong. And then, you know, oftentimes then we're like, oh, they hadn't done their work. Oh, they weren't in full alignment. Oh, they weren't meeting me. Oh, they weren't the full expression. When in reality, if we could, you know, be present with the process that this person maybe is going through, we might end up getting exactly what we've always dreamed of and exactly what we want. And I think that's important.
I think you're speaking to a really interesting and important shadow side of the spiritual practitioner who is in the relationship realm, where there's this, there can be some messy power dynamics. Are we ready to shift into talking about some of that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That feels like that's where we're going. There can be some potentially messy power dynamics that come into play in these relationships on both sides. I want to speak a little bit about some of the victim energy that can come through when, as a spiritual practitioner, and I was in an abusive relationship a few years ago, or several years ago, and I've had a couple of these relationships actually several years ago, when at a point in my life when, for whatever reason, I was feeling some resistance into stepping into the full expression of my gifts and my psychic path, my work. And so I somehow found the perfect person for me to date who would sidetrack me from my path. And I was doing it as a self-sabotage. I was putting myself in potentially harmful and actually kind of harmful situations and damaging situations that knocked me off my ability to be psychic, knocked me out of my ability to do my work in the world, because there was some part of myself very deep down that wasn't quite ready. So that's and I've seen this in other people too, is who are you calling into your life? Again, either in the romantic sense or friendship sense, or in your family or whatever. Like, what relationships are you perpetuating because of some aspect of fear? Like, okay, I'm going to keep the people around me who keep me small because I'm really afraid of how big I actually am.
Yeah, that's huge. Really important to look at, and not always the easiest one to look at, for sure. You know, speaking of power, so another piece that, for me, I'm just going to speak my personal experiences, that I have a lot of power. So, you know, when people meet me, sometimes they're like, oh, okay. You know, it's one of the things that people remark about and have for a very long time, that I have a lot of power. Or actually my partner, he's funny because, you know, we'll go out or be at a event or whatever, and or he'll be wherever he is in LA, and he will say that he's dating me, and like he's like pretty much 10 times out of 10 they're like, oh Kat, yes, oh my gosh, she's so powerful. And his response is, yes, she is. And so there is this sometimes this power that we have, which, and I know, Michelle, you have this, you exude this power. And so it can actually be a great deterrent to people approaching us or talking to us or asking us out or, being our friend, asking us, about our day, really, because we sort of have, we're teachers and facilitators. So we have this certain power dynamic where, we are a certain way. And I know personally, I have over the years very much utilized this power dynamic to keep people away from me, to keep people from really knowing me, from seeing my vulnerabilities or my weaknesses, from, getting close. I have very much used this. And, but the truth is that once you get to know me, like I'm always super silly and fun. And after, a little while, like I soften and become much more feminine, but it takes someone. At first I'm like, okay, wait, I'm like, just so you know, I could kick your ass right now, like physically or energetically, I could take you. And then it takes me a little while to open up, and then I'm very like fun and playful and have a, a certain like childlike nature and play and creativity is really important to me. And softness, but it takes a minute to get there. So I think, what I'm probably saying here is that not always is what is seen on the outside is that the full expression of what it is you're going to get in that person. So maybe be willing to invest the time and the attention and the energy into really getting to know this person. And then letting yourself be delighted and appreciative of the parts of themselves that they actually don't show the world, the parts of themselves that maybe are that more vulnerable, soft space that they're able to, land into.
I think you're speaking to a really important aspect of the inner workings of the practitioner, or at least a practitioner who has a certain degree of, I don't know exactly what the word I want to use is, because it's not persona. This is like, so Kat, you do this, I do this too, where, I'm speaking on stage in front of people, I'm teaching classes, I'm a face in this community, and so are you. And yet everything, and even here, right? We joke, we banter, we have a sense of humor, and yet right now we are still faces in this community. And so there's a certain way of showing up here that has a slightly different flavor than showing up when just the two of us are talking on the phone, of course, and or talking in a more intimate personal setting with anyone. And it doesn't mean that this isn't who we are. This is completely who I am. This is a huge part of me. And Kat, I know your fierce, embodied, ass unfuckwithable, powerful self, like that's totally who you are, and yet it's not the complete picture of who you are. And yet many practitioners who are in this kind of position of either being used to speaking or working with clients or whatever, there is this certain degree of protection in place, and that's really what it is protection. It is not necessarily safe for us to bring through the silly, bring through the vulnerable, either because it puts us in a personal position of vulnerability, or because for, in the case of working with clients, that's not necessarily appropriate to include in our client relationships, of this degree of personal, getting to see all the silly sense of humor or the weird sense of humor, whatever the deal is. And so we're used to having these energetic barriers in place. It doesn't mean that we're not open to letting you in. It just means that it might be a little bit of a process to fully expand into that.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of speak a little bit more on that, one of my teachers and mentors, amazing, incredible woman. I remember we would have conversations, or I would come to visit her. I was living in Portland and she was still in LA at that time. And I would come for a visit, but very rarely. But when I would come for a visit, she would just talk my ear off. Like I couldn't even go to sleep because I would just be like falling asleep because she would still be talking and she's telling and na. And really a lot of it came down to that she was seen as such a pillar of this work that she was bringing through, this powerful teacher and guide and practitioner. And she had all of this information flowing through her that was so profound that she found that people didn't invite her to potlucks. They didn't invite her to like hang out. They didn't ask her how, what's going on in your life. They often would just come with their problems or what they're dealing with or where they're at. I mean, we have a tendency to become the healer, the practitioner, the caretaker in a lot of our relationships. And I think it's one of the reasons that we keep ourselves a little bit more separate, is because then all of our relationships all of a sudden become work where we're disseminating information to people. And so I think in that is maybe the opportunity for all of us, practitioners and otherwise, to be a little more open-handed and hearted towards those that maybe even we see as our, people who are, I don't know, whatever it is, they're the mentors or the teachers or the guides of the community, that they're people too. And like, you could treat us like people. It's okay.
Yeah, it's great. And going to game nights and doing, normal human things. That's a thing too. Let's see. I want to talk about, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, with oftentimes we end up being the healers or the teachers, practitioners in our relationships. There's the kind of the light side and the shadow side of that. So the light side is healing and teaching obviously takes place in any relationship, over the course of a relationship, either romantic or friendship, etc. But looking at, is it the default? Is it the primary function of the relationship? And I admittedly have had some of these happen, or I've been on activation dates. Kat, you and I have talked about this, where we'll go on activation dates with someone who maybe there was a connection or a spark or something. And then over the course of the date, it becomes very, very clear that whatever the attraction was, there was something in them that needed to be catalyzed. And then, you just end up looking at it like, okay, I'm not going to date you, but here, yeah, let's talk about your mother. And like, okay, you have this big revelation and now you go off and heal your relationship. Like, great, thanks for dinner. Nice to meet you.
And this is really important. Like, we can't gloss over this, because I have seen this consistently. I know for myself so many times. I've seen it with you, Michelle. I've seen it with my other practitioners. And, especially, here's one thing. If you're not fully doing your work also in the world, you're going to come across this even more, because the work has to move through you. So it's going to find an outlet somewhere. But even if you are doing your work in the world, it's sometimes going to happen where you are, and sometimes you'll have periods of time where it's like, are you kidding me? Like, everybody else gets to go and be in a relationship, and I'm here on activation duty where I'm like turning on people's abilities and opening them up shamanically and giving, them healings, and their life has changed and they're running out the door. And I know I've heard it from you. I've heard it from me. I've heard it from other people, this experience of like, why me? Like, am I just destined to be this like healer running around helping these hot, beautiful people to become activated, and I never get one? Like, what about me? Why don't I get a relationship?
Yeah.
So it's important to feel into those and really, really be honest with yourself of like, oh, okay, this is what this is. It's okay. It doesn't mean I'm never going to have a relationship, but this is what's happening right now. Okay, am I signing up for this? Am I not? And you know, what are you signing up for? And being honest with yourself. So
Absolutely.
and sometimes it takes really being honest with that other person, sometimes in a kind of way where, you know, I don't know if it's like, I am here to heal you, but, you know, just, you know, being honest with the fact that maybe this relationship isn't going somewhere if they're feeling something that you know is not true.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, I started, it's funny, as soon as I started doing this, I got a whole lot less of it. So I think there was just putting the awareness of it out there, you know, with people expressing interest in me. And then, you know, we get into conversation a little bit more and I realize like, oh yeah, they're interested in me for my work, you know, even though they think they're romantically interested. And then I'll say something to that effect, like in a very kind way. And then it like, they're gone after that, either because they didn't like that I pointed it out or they didn't realize that that was the case or something. And then it's like, yeah, peace out. All right. That's what I thought. So
Yeah.
right. I think I feel called to talk about patience a little bit on both sides of this.
Oh my gosh.
Right, because for the spiritual practitioners or the energy workers and the non-practitioners or the non-energy workers, there will be times when you don't understand what the fuck the other person is saying. And there will be these moments where you're totally crossing wires and having like, but this is the way that the thing is. And they're like, okay, but this is the way that the thing is. And even though there can be so much love and compassion there, sometimes you're just not going to see eye to eye because you're coming from these different filters. And being patient with yourselves, being patient with each other is vital.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, my partner and I, we've had some definitely arguments around some esoteric stuff where I'm like, this is the way that it is. I am telling you, this is the way that it is. And he's like, I don't believe that that's true, you know, and this is what I see and this is my experience. And, you know, there's that part of us inside that's like, oh my gosh, well, how can I be in a relationship with this person who doesn't believe this thing? Like, and then there's the part that can just have that patience and go, you know what? It is absolutely fine for them to believe whatever they want, as long as it's okay for me to believe whatever I want. And to back off and be patient and be kind and maybe change the subject and focus on something else for a minute. And, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, this man that I'm with, he brings so much to me that it's okay if we don't believe every single esoteric spiritual thing to be, you know, exactly, we all believe exactly the same thing, right?
Yeah. I also want to touch a little bit upon what are, so kind of like, what are the important things? We talked about some of the important things already, but for practitioners who are looking to call in their person, right? What are some of the important things to keep in mind for that as well? You know, so like, so having someone around you who helps you keep your vibration high is really important. Again, they don't have to be doing the same work as you. They don't even have to believe the same things as you do. They don't have to speak the same language. But if they can maintain that level of curiosity and openness and support, and you feel lit up, like you feel as though your vibration stays really high around this person, that's still a really good thing.
Yeah, and in that same vein, someone who doesn't what is it? Sabotage you, who doesn't, you know, sabotage, especially a lot of us have, you know, as amazing as we are, we have our own issues around doing our daily practices. You know, I support coaches and healers and all of the amazing people. And I know that a lot of us have a lot of challenge on getting up in the morning, doing daily practice, doing our meditations, getting our work done, writing, doing, you know, we're self-employed by and large, in a business where you're constantly having to get new clients and create new programs and put new things out, and you know, it's pretty easy to get sidetracked. And so having someone who, you know, they don't have to be like, you know, cheering you on or, you know, doing practices with you, but somebody who doesn't give you a hard time, right? Who is like, okay, yeah, you're doing your morning practice. Great. I'll see you afterwards. Who like can just, you know, be okay with the fact that you sometimes, and for a lot of us, we need to, you know, I do a lot of ceremonial work, which is like basically the whole weekend I'm gone. Or, you know, some of us are very involved in moon rituals or certain, you know, ritual things that we're committed to. And it's very helpful when we have someone who's like, okay, yeah, you're going to be on these occasions of you know, whatever these rituals are that you're part of, or the spiritual community that you're part of, that they can support you being in a spiritual community, which often is very supportive for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there any other direction that we want to take with this? I feel like next week, again, we're getting into more of the shadow side of this kind of thing.
Yes. And, you know, just to like tip onto that shadow piece is for us to really be paying attention to our, you know, our own kind of wounded healer self in the relationships, you know. Yes, like I said, you know, to be looking at, okay, this person's shit coming up and we're working, we're dealing, but sometimes we have a tendency to become so focused on someone else and their healing and the, you know, taking care of them. We're caretakers and givers, and we can sometimes become so focused on that other person's experience and what's going on and our own shadow stuff, that we can lose our own personal, you know, center and focus.
I think this is
those people over and over again that are that same person we're trying to save.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's we covered a lot. I feel like we're missing something though, and I'm not sure what it is. What are we missing? Maybe viewers, if there's any questions that you have, you can chat in. Absolutely, let us know. What do you want to know? Do we talk about boundaries?
Not really. No.
Not really. That's probably a good one. Boundaries. It's a really good idea to have boundaries. And I mean, that's it. We danced around it. Kat, not letting yourself
you're starting to get a little break.
Lost in this other person because you are in tune, you know. So hello? Can you hear me now?
Now, okay, hold on. Let's just see. I think you're probably fine now. Okay, repeat all of that about the boundaries and getting lost in people.
Basically, I mean, to expand further upon what you said around getting lost in, and this is important for both sides of the coin here too. So for the practitioner, you know, the probably empathic, energetically sensitive to self, and also vice versa. You know, if somebody, you know, if you're partnered with a person who is doing this work in the world, you want to be a good partner, you want to be supportive, you believe in their mission, you love what they're doing, don't let that come at the cost of you maintaining who you are and what makes you super magical too, even in your, you know, in whatever way that expresses for you. So yes, of course, there's always learning and growing, and maybe you're with someone who's sparking certain interest in you, but don't let that mean that you stop devoting yourself to the things that you really love. So maintaining your energetic boundaries that way, maintaining boundaries again around like you were saying, Kat, of, well, these are my boundaries, I'm on, you know, still maintain that level of devotion to your practice, still, keep your dates with your girlfriends or the guys' night out or whatever the deal is, because all of those continue to enforce. And again, this is applicable to any relationship, not just this particular kind of relationship. Maintaining who you are and continuing to grow as your own individual person, in addition to continuing to grow as a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Super important to be maintaining those kinds of boundaries, and be willing to play, right? Be willing to share and explore and see what might be there for the both of you that you do have interest in. And like for some of us, we have a lot of trouble being seen, and being seen as our most magical, powerful self. And when we can enter into a relationship with someone who sees us as our most magical, powerful self, who accepts that fully, who appreciates it and encourages it and encourages that shining, then we've found something magical. And it doesn't matter what they do or like who they are in the world in a certain kind of way. That gives us permission to keep bringing our work and being who we are in the world. And that's really important for us, because when we stop doing that, we suffer.
And everybody suffers. Yeah. So I think what we can distill out of this, we've given you a lot of really good, helpful ideas, but basically I also want to talk about, like, don't be attached to your person being a certain way. So Kat, like you were saying, we have the idea of, I'm going to call in the person who is the perfect complement to me in all of these ways, and they do this and this and this, and they're this kind of practitioner, and or whatever the deal is. And then you meet someone who is absolutely none of those things, and yet still supports you in being that most magical, biggest, most powerful, shiny, awesome, potent version of yourself that you just feel great around. That's okay. It is okay.
Yeah. And we all have different skill sets. We all are bringing different things in. And one of the things I felt so supported this summer, I had 2 retreats in a row, and I don't know what I was thinking. But my partner showed up, and he built a yurt and a shade structure and this entire beautiful magical experience for everyone. And he cooked and just took care of everybody for both retreats. And it was honestly one of the most, I felt so taken care of, so seen and so loved, in a way that, maybe if he was just another, like he was a practitioner like me and we were doing it together, or maybe even teaching together or whatever, we wouldn't have shown up that way. It would have been different and wouldn't have been as nurturing and as, oh my gosh, so structurally, physically, on the earthly plane helpful. Some of us really need people who aren't as spiritual as us, because it grounds our energy. It keeps us operating in the human experience in a certain kind of way. And, like the man that I'm with, he's rooted, he's grounded, like he's very of the earth. And, that gives me permission just to kind of relax into that energy and not be so spiritually activated all of the time, which I've had relationships with people who are sort of in that vein, and it can be quite ungrounding and exhaustive too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. I feel like, I think we're good, and we'll resume next week with the shadow, right?
Yep. So next week we're going to talk about the shadow in the spiritual communities. So predators, narcissists, sociopaths, the bad apples, the gurus, the shamans who are not in alignment, what we're seeing in our communities, and what do we do about it? And so this is a super huge, important topic that we're going to press into next week, I believe on Wednesday, right, Michelle?
No, on Tuesday at 1:00 Pacific time.
Okay, so next week it's still Tuesday at 1:00. That's right. Oh, that's right. We moved it.
Yes, we are moving the live broadcast from now on, unless otherwise noted, still Tuesday, but 1:00 Pacific time.
Okay.
Instead of noon.
I forgot.
Okay.
And feel free to reach out to us about this topic or anything else. If there are any topics that you would like to see us discuss here, we are open to your insights and suggestions. We appreciate any communication that you want to bring our way via our Facebook page, Shaman Sister Sessions, our email, shamansistersessions@gmail.com. You can see all of our prior episodes on our YouTube channel of the same name, or you can listen to them in your car, at your leisure, on iTunes or Stitcher. And we will see you next week. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.